guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you a comparison video today between the Nike Flyknit Lunar 1 and the Nike Flyknit Lunar 2. These are two flagship runners from Nike, both featuring Flyknit technology, and a lot of people are interested in knowing what the actual differences are. And let me tell you that the differences aren't quite as significant as they may appear. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. As far as uppers go, obviously both of these two shoes are made from Nike's new flagship material, Flyknit. Flyknit is a woven style of upper where essentially they can engineer support, flexibility, and breathability in any area of the upper that they choose, and it makes for a truly sock-like amount of comfort. It's a very cool innovation, and it truly does perform extremely well, not to mention that it looks pretty good too. Now, in terms of design with the uppers, you're going to see that the Flyknit Lunar 1 featured a very straightforward, very clean styling about it. For the most part, all of the uppers were pretty much one solid color, or at least colors that didn't really have too much contrast to them. You had your Nike swoosh right in the middle, a little bit of design going here, some complexity in the Flyknit pattern through the midfoot with these kind of triangular fingers, with of course a fly wire running through the middle, and you had a very traditional kind of running shoe design with a single free-flowing tongue, no enclosure system whatsoever. My one complaint with this shoe would be that the tongue is a little bit on the short side, and of course you have your mesh lining on the inside, some extra padding around the heel, and again, it's just a very, very comfortable, well thought out, simple design that offered a unique feel because of that soft, flexible Flyknit upper. Now when you look at the Flyknit Lunar 2, you're going to see a shoe that appears to be much more complex, but the design itself isn't actually all that much different. Basically, the difference between the Flyknit 1 and the Flyknit 2 as far as the upper is concerned is that they exaggerated a lot of the elements a little bit more on the 2 as opposed to the 1, which, like I said, which was a much more simple design. So you can see that, again, you still have these triangular pieces running through the midfoot. Obviously, they stand out a lot more because they moved the Nike swoosh back towards the heel, and they added kind of an accent color to all the different colorways. So again, you notice that triangular pattern a lot more on the 2 as opposed to the 1. But again, it's a very similar concept, just slightly more exaggerated on this particular shoe. And in terms of the feel, when you tie the laces tight, it's very similar through the midfoot. There's not really any major changes there. You do have a little bit of extra ventilation that isn't quite as extreme on the Flyknit 1 as what you're going to get on the Flyknit 2. And in the toe box area, they appear to be very, very similar to each other. But I did find that for whatever reason, the Flyknit 2 seems to be a little bit softer, a little bit more flexible. And because of that, I found it to be slightly more comfortable than the 1. Although both of these shoes are above average, well above average when it comes to overall comfort. Another major change that I mentioned is, of course, the tongue area. This features more of a traditional design, whereas this is more of an enclosure system. It's not a free-flowing tongue. It's attached to the sides, as you guys can see, and you have a little bit of an extension piece that is kind of free-flowing, which just makes for a very comfortable fit. And again, you don't have that issue with the tongue falling down on you, so you don't necessarily have to tie the laces on this particular pair to get a nice, secure, snug fit. It's very, very comfortable, even if you choose to wear them with the laces undone casually. As far as the heel area is concerned, that has remained pretty much identical going from the Flyknit 1 to the Flyknit 2. There's pretty much no difference whatsoever, and it is every bit as comfortable. So in terms of what the major differences are, when it comes to styling, I personally think that the Flyknit Lunar 1 is a little bit cleaner of a design, and I personally prefer having the Nike swoosh in the middle as opposed to towards the heel. But in terms of actual comfort and performance elements, I tend to prefer the Flyknit Lunar 2 just because it is a little bit more flexible, a little bit more natural feeling, and I much, much prefer the enclosure system as opposed to the free-flowing tongue on the Flyknit Lunar 1. As far as cushion and the outsoles are concerned, again, there have been some changes made from the Flyknit Lunar 1 to the Flyknit Lunar 2, but for the most part, the foams themselves remain the same. It's just the design itself that changes the feel ever so slightly. Now, starting off with the Flyknit Lunar 1, you have their combination of Lunar foam, which is their soft yet responsive foam, in combination with Phylon, which acts as the carrier in this particular situation, and that is the white foam that you see going around the outsole, as well as kind of intuitively contouring the bottom. It acts as the enclosure system for the Lunar Lawn, which runs right to the bottom of the shoe, so it's supposed to provide more of a bottomless, very cushioned, soft, plush feel underfoot, and you definitely do get that sensation from this particular shoe. I did find that the Lunar Lawn did compress after several months of use and didn't feel quite as spongy as it did from brand new, but that is to be expected from most foam cushion running shoes, and for the most part, even though these are well over a year old now, they are still very, very comfortable, and I put a lot of hours into this particular shoe. As far as the rubber on the bottom goes, you can see that all the rubber is positioned strategically on the bottom of the shoe in kind of the high wear zones, trying to keep the weight down a little bit. So you have this black rubber going around the heel, which as you can see didn't really wear all that much, and then you have these blue pod areas in the forefoot and right around the toe, all of which are very smooth as far as their texture goes. So if you are going to be running on very smooth, slightly slick surfaces, this can be a little bit slippery, I found, but for the most part traction seemed to be adequate for just normal jogging and running, if you were in kind of like an urban type of environment, I should say. Not something that you would necessarily want to take into the trails, is kind of what I'm getting at here. Now, as far as the Flyknit Lunar 2 goes, you can see that the outsole has changed a little bit as far as design goes. This is going to be their new Lunar Lawn cushioning system that you're not only going to see on this shoe, but also future running models from Nike, I'm sure. I believe it's already lined up to be featured on the new Lunar Glide 6, which is coming out probably in the next couple of months. But as far as this cushion system goes, this black foam on top, again, is your Lunar Lawn, whereas this gray foam is the Flyknit foam acting as the carrier for the Lunar Lawn, which again is kind of a bottomless type of design. It goes right to the bottom of the shoe, and basically all the Flyknit is there to do is support that Lunar Lawn foam, give the shoe some nice stability, where the Lunar Lawn is going to provide all that soft cushion. And to me, I found like this particular outsole felt a little bit taller. It felt like you were getting a little bit more Lunar Lawn, and for that, I never felt like I was ever touching the bottom. It did really have that bottomless sensation. Again, very similar to the Flyknit Lunar 1, but slightly more cushioned and slightly spongier in my opinion. And again, it's kind of difficult to say because I have been wearing these for so long, and the foam cushion is definitely not the way it was from day one, I'm sure of that. So for the most part, again, the feeling is going to be very similar. I just found that this shoe, the newer version, does feel ever so slightly softer and ever so slightly more comfortable underfoot. As far as the traction pattern is concerned, you can see you get a little bit more rubber on this particular layout. And the rubber itself is in a slightly more aggressive pattern. So if you were going to wear these in slightly kind of more difficult trails, I guess, something that's going to require a little bit of extra grip under your feet, I think you're going to get that more so from the Flyknit Lunar 2 than you would out of the Lunar 1, which is kind of more of a smooth traction system. So again, you get these rubber pads around the heel area in the high wear zones, and then pretty much the entire forefoot, and even right at the tip of the toe, which is a kind of a big improvement there because you really didn't get much traction from this Flyknit foam, which is pretty much completely exposed at the toe on this one, whereas like I said, you get that little bit of extra rubber there, which does make a pretty significant difference in terms of overall grip. I've got some decent amount of time in both of these as far as running goes, definitely more in the Flyknit Lunar 1 just because I've had it for over a year now, but as far as comfort goes, again, I did find that the Lunar 2 does feel ever so slightly more cushioned, but for the most part they're both extremely comfortable for anybody looking for a more cushioned foam running shoe.
Alright, here's just a quick look at the Flyknit Lunar 1 and Flyknit Lunar 2s on feet, just so you can get a side-by-side on-feet comparison of how they actually look. And visually, I think both of these shoes are pretty good looking. I guess leave your comments down below. Let me know which one you prefer in terms of overall visuals. On feet, again, they feel very similar. I would say the Flyknit Lunar 2 edges out the Lunar 1 in terms of overall cushion ever so slightly. It just feels a little bit more plush, and that could be due to the new carrier overall. But for the most part, they have a very similar feel. In terms of fit, they're pretty much exactly the same in width. They're a very, very similar shape. I would just say that the woven Flyknit pattern on the Flyknit Lunar 2 feels a little bit more open in comparison to the one, but again, they both offer a sock-like level of comfort. In terms of sizing, I find that both of these run exactly the same, about half a size small. You can go true to size if you want a more snug fit for just casual wear, but if you actually intend on running in these, or you just want a more comfortable fit overall, I would definitely recommend going a half size up, just to get a slightly roomier feel in the toe box area, which is better for running in the long run. So that's pretty much it as far as what these guys look like on feet, and I'll leave you to my final thoughts.
Alright guys, that's it for my comparison between the Nike Flyknit Lunar 1 and the Flyknit Lunar 2. They're both absolutely fantastic shoes. I think that as far as casual wear goes, the Flyknit Lunar 1 may be a little better option. It's a more simple design, more aesthetically pleasing for casual wear, whereas the Lunar 2 is still a good looking shoe in my opinion, just a little bit more out there as far as design goes, maybe a little bit more difficult to wear casually for most people. Another thing to consider is that you can pick up the Flyknit Lunar 1 on sale, since because it is technically an older model now. There aren't too many left around still, but again, if you can get your hands on a pair for a relatively decent price, this is a fantastic shoe overall. My preference when it comes to actual performance is the newer model. I think that it feels a little bit more open, it's a little bit more comfortable. They fix the issues with the tongue, and you get a slightly more cushioned feel from this brand new Lunar Lawn outsole. But again, either of these two shoes are absolutely fantastic when it comes to styling, comfort, and overall performance. If you guys are interested in either of these two shoes, I will leave buy it now links in the description of this video if you guys want to go